Hey fam, welcome back to the Rod Dr. Eric K. Coleman Show here in the month of January. I cannot believe that we are here in episode 4 of season 4. So it's the 4-4 day. Really appreciate you all rocking with me this long. It's truly an honor. It's a pleasure to be here with you all, learning and growing together. That's really what we're doing here, learning and growing together. And if this is your first time on the platform, welcome. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am, for joining us as we continue this conversation surrounding relationships. Please, ma'am, please, sir, go ahead and do the housekeeping item of the day. If you have not, like, share, and most of all, subscribe to the channel, to the platform. That way you will be abreast and kept up to date with everything that is pertaining to this platform. Over the course of January here in 2024, we've talked about a couple of things surrounding focusing on yourself and rebuilding yourself, making sure that you straight as you go into this new year, doing things differently, changing the paradigm. As we talk about in the book Paradigm, thinking differently about relationships, we're focusing on ourselves first, not necessarily what the other person is doing, but we are focusing, making sure that we are able to show up and engage in a healthy manner, in a healthy way in relationships that we decide to move forward in. We've also been talking about when you're trying to establish new relationships, go into a different direction in the new year, as we are, pruning and we're doing away with things and we're adding new things. What are some of the mistakes that we utilized in the past, things that we do not need to repeat, things that we do need not bring along with us, patterns that we don't need to operate in anymore, especially if we want a different result. So we're talking about how we're going to avoid those things as we are entering into new relationships. And last week we had talked about building connections, asking the right questions, entering into a conversation with the right perspective. You are intentional about it. You're being methodical. There's an end game to your line of questioning. We're just not going in haphazardly just to say we had a conversation, but we're looking for a Socratic discussion, a more meaningful, in-depth conversation. How can we draw out things within the conversation that can make the conversation meaty, make it hearty, make it rich, that we can both walk away with a better understanding pertaining to the context as to which the conversation started. And with all those coming together, today we're going to be talking about rebound relationships. How, if we don't do the work, as we talked about in the first episode, if we don't do the work on ourselves and we're just jumping from relationship to relationship and we're not sharpening our tools, we're not adding things to our kits to be better communicators, to be better, to just be better in our relationship, in the people that we pick, in the people that we choose, we are not going to be successful if we have not done the work on ourselves, if we don't know or have identified the things that we need to be aware of and not engage in again, if we have not developed our communication skills to when we want to enter into a new relationship with somebody, but we don't know how to do this thing, we are going to, as we're going to talk about today, choose wrong again. Because we have not done the work on ourselves, we have not healed. And then that's when we talk about this terminology called rebound relationships. So that's going to be the focus today. New relationship baggage. It's a new year. It's a new beginning. We're trying to do better, but we cannot bring new things. We can't move into new things. We can't move into new things while bringing in the old stuff. And that is what we're talking about today. How do we not bring the old stuff into new relationships, but we're still trying to expect a different result but we have not done the work on ourselves to make sure that we are healthy enough to move into new relationships. Let's go ahead and get into the clip.
You are now coming from a more negative place due to this experience, and you need time to heal. So when you jump into a new relationship, you are carrying that baggage from the previous relationship into this new one with an innocent bystander.
Yeah. Innocent bystander. Yeah, you're bringing this stuff in.
Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Stefan Lavoisier, aka Stefan Speaks, back with another dating and relationship advice video. Today, we're talking about 3 reasons why rebound relationships don't work. As always, before we get started, be sure to like this video, share this video, hit that notification button, and leave your comments below. Do you think a rebound relationship can work? Now, for those of you who may not be aware of what a rebound relationship is, it's essentially when you adjust in a relationship, you break up, and then you jump into a new relationship, all right? And a lot of times you're jumping into that new relationship because you're trying to move past the previous relationship. You want to just get a distraction and all these different things, and so it becomes your rebound to bounce back from the heartbreak that you just experienced or the letdown you just experienced from your previous relationship. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say no one has ever had a successful rebound relationship. What I will say is that it is unlikely to be successful.
I'm glad that he said that, because I know some people will say, well, I've had one. That's very anecdotal. You cannot apply 1 or 2 relationships, or you cannot say just because you've witnessed a relationship that was successful, or you might be that relationship that was successful, but then you try to apply it generally across all platforms. That was one of the main things that I learned during my doctoral program, is things have to be statistically proven before it can be something that can be applied across society. And there was a, lack of better terminology, there was a 95% threshold that had to be proven. A 95% threshold that this had to apply. It had to meet the criteria of 75% of validity and reliability for something to be deemed a theory or something that could be deemed a best practice. Or even when we're talking about medicine, and we've all seen those new drugs and whatnot, or calls for test trials, field sampling. That's exactly what that is. You cannot, from the FDA perspective, for the Federal Drug Administration, you cannot release a new drug out onto the market, into society, unless it has gone through a rigorous validity research process. Meaning that it can vary, but I'm just going along with what my research was. A 95% chance that this has been tested as reliable and accurate. Yes, you have your outliers. Yes, you have anecdotal situations, but we're talking about the general consensus from a statistical perspective of what has been deemed accurate and right and correct. And so what my brother is talking about here is, yes, we just can't say, in a nutshell, that the things that he's going to talk about here is going to be a cookie cutter across all spectrums. But for the sake of the conversation, or for the sake of the suggestions that he's going to give, he is letting us know that, yes, there are some relationships out there that people have jumped in from what we call a rebound relationship that have worked. Sure. But we cannot apply that across the board. So I just really wanted to preface the conversation here. We can't go into this thinking, well, my such and such did this or my such and such did that. How can he say it don't work? No, we cannot assert extreme situations and make it seem as if that is common across the board. That's just not reality. So I just really wanted to point that out.
So it is in most cases going to be a problem, going to cause more damage. So essentially it is not going to work. So let me give you those 3 reasons why rebound relationships do not work. Reason number 1, you haven't had time to heal. Listen, you just had a relationship with an individual. 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, hell, maybe it was just a few months. Either way, you were emotionally invested, all right? And now you've been hurt, let down, disappointed. Maybe you feel like you wasted so much time. Whatever it is, you are now coming from a more negative place due to this experience. And you need time to heal. So when you jump into a new relationship, you are carrying that baggage from the previous relationship into this new one with an innocent bystander.
Absolutely.
With an individual who may or may not be there to genuinely love you, but either way, you are going to now make it harder to find success because you haven't resolved the things that might trigger you. You haven't addressed the deeper issues that need to be addressed. You haven't possibly corrected the behavior that may have contributed to your last relationship. And if you don't do that, you're going to see effect. Not to mention, I tell people all the time, when you do not heal, you are 99.9% likely to choose the wrong person. Now,
Absolutely.
Granted, I've never run a scientific study.
Oh, see, he just got into scientific study, which, I'm going to jump into that, but I want to stop and pause there for a second because he's been touching on some heavy hitter information here, and I talk about it in chapter 1 of the book, Paradigm Thinking Differently About Relationships. There are some questions that I pose in chapter 1, and those questions are, first one, is it easy for you to see the flaws in others and difficult to see them in yourself? Number 2, when was the last time you genuinely took an honest inventory of what influences your thinking, decision making, and relationship choices? Does the perception you have about yourself align with reality? Will the description of yourself agree with what others say about you in relationships? Number 4, evaluate the 3 closest relationships. How healthy are they? Number 5, does your contribution in relationships add value to the other person? And the last one is, how did you create your standards in relationships? Do you exhibit the relational standard you require of other people? And this is what he's saying right here. We haven't had time to decompress. We haven't had time to process, think, to figure out what we did wrong in the relationship, which people don't like to hear that. No one wants to think that they're wrong. But as he alluded to, how did we contribute to how the other person acted or responded? We have to take accountability and personal responsibility and understand that we play a role in relationships. No matter how good or bad, we played a part sometimes in how other people act and respond. We just have to get that into our psyche. We cannot think that only when someone responds in a positive manner that we had something to do with it. But if they respond in a negative tone, we don't have anything to do with it. No, that's not reality. It's not reality. So let's go ahead and figure out what he's about to say here about, the scientific study. He's given some examples here, but he admits that he has not done a scientific study. However, let's see where he goes with this.
To back up the 99.9%, but I have rarely, if ever, found someone who hasn't healed and were able to choose and embrace the right person. You might meet the right person, you might entertain it for a little bit, but you will have a very hard time staying in that relationship because when you haven't healed, it is very difficult to be vulnerable again. It's very difficult to fully emotionally invest at the level necessary for a successful, healthy relationship.
And that goes into chapter 2 of the book. It talks about a safe place and a safe space. If you haven't healed from that last person, there's no way for you to open up yourself and be vulnerable to receive this new person. But you definitely bringing your baggage in and you wanting this person to receive all of you, but you have not been able to process to be able to receive that other person wholly, because they just very well might be the person that you need, not the person that you want. Hear me good. The person that you need, not the person that you want. But if you have not healed and you don't have a clear head, you're not seeing things rationally or processing logically, you can miss it because you're still jaded and focusing on the past relationship, and you are bringing in things into this new relationship that are toxic, and you can't think and see clearly.
So if you do meet the right person, it's going to make you very uncomfortable, very overwhelmed, and quite frankly, scared as hell. All right. And you are likely to sabotage or run from that situation. So what is more likely to happen? You're going to entertain the person you don't have those feelings for. You're going to entertain the person who is good enough to be with, but doesn't cause you to be vulnerable. You're going to entertain the wrong person. Plain and simple. So from the start, you are set up for failure because you're dealing with someone who doesn't belong in your life, who you can't have a full, healthy relationship with. So it is always best to not rush into a new relationship, but to take time to heal. Now, people will ask me all the time, well, how long do I need to wait before I date again? Listen, it's not about time. It's about healing. It's about the work you put in. If you do the steps to healing, and you accomplish that in a few months, and possibly even weeks, depending on what it is that needs to be resolved, it is possible, then you're ready to date again. However, if you drag your feet and you just distract yourself from your pain and you don't actually heal, then it could take you years. Hell, some people lifetimes. Some people go to their grave without healing. So as always, if you watch previous videos and you know, I have my book, Love After Heartbreak, check it out. I'll put the link in the description and the comment section. It will give you the steps to healing, all right? And you gotta do that, because if you don't expect a rebound relationship to work for you. The number 2 reason why rebound relationships don't work is because you're more than likely going to overlook the red flags. So again, start with...
Hey y'all, we talked about this in a couple previous episodes. Ignoring the red flags. I cannot stress enough how critical that is. When you have not had time to heal, when you have not done the work on yourself, when you're avoiding things, when you don't pay attention to the missteps. I think we talked about this in episode 2. You are going to overlook red flags just for the sake of being with somebody. Just for the sake of being with somebody, you're going to compromise. And I talked about this ad nauseum in episode 2 about the differences between the actual terminology when we say the word settle. Because again, in society today, when we talk about settle, there's a jaded misconception. When people say settle now, they think that they are better than somebody. They think that I am the echelon, I'm the cat's meow, and I refuse to settle for somebody who is beneath me. No, that's narcissistic. That's self-centeredness, that's selfishness, that's arrogance and ego. When I'm talking about settling is when you move into a relationship to where you know it is toxic and you know that there is no value in this relationship. You are not growing. The other person is not growing. You're not moving forward together. You're not developing. You're not enhancing yourself. You're not making each other better. You're not motivating one another. And it's constant drama and turmoil and strife and agony and pain. That's what I'm talking about when you overlook red flags that causes you to repeat this perpetual cycle of you jumped out of one bad relationship, now you're in another bad relationship, or probably even worse than the one that you left out of because you have not done the work and you overlooked the red flags.
The fact that you haven't healed. And when you haven't healed, it also blinds you from other people's dysfunction. Hell, if anything, it makes you more comfortable with people's dysfunction. Because in this other, I want to say weird way, but subconsciously it helps you feel more comfortable
Yes.
about your dysfunction.
Yep.
Right? It is hard.
Yep. Chapter 7 of the book. Your perception is not always reality. We create this false reality so that we can cope. Said it in last episode when we were talking about building better connections. We do certain things to justify ourselves. So you're going to respond to certain situations. You're going to say certain things. You're going to do certain things to justify the emotion and the feeling that you want to have. And it may not even be an appropriate emotion at the time. Yes, emotions are real. We never want to discount somebody's emotions, but your emotions can be displaced and your emotions can cause you to do things that are not logical if you feed into solely your emotions.
For someone who is broken, who is hurt, who still has trauma, to deal with and embrace a very healthy individual, all right? Because it shines a light on their shortcomings. So what we do, consciously or subconsciously, is entertain someone who's as broken as us, who's as dysfunctional as us, if not worse. Because now we don't feel as bad.
Absolutely.
Now we don't feel like we gotta do anything about our issues because they got issues. And so we will find it easier to overlook their red flags and entertain the wrong individual. So again, with the healing, you're going to be able to see things more clearly. With the healing, you're not going to be able to tolerate someone else's dysfunction. And when I say not tolerate it, I don't mean look down on people. I don't mean just automatically dismiss them. I mean, you're not going to entertain an unhealthy relationship with them. You're going to be able to call it out, recognize it for what it is, and understand that if they're not willing to fix it or work on it, then you can't be with them. But when you have not healed, you won't see it that way. You will make excuses, you will rationalize, you will find all the reasons to entertain them because you just want someone there.
Yep.
You don't want to be alone, you don't want to dwell on the hurt, you don't want to think about your ex, you just want companionship. I can't even say love. You want love, but in that situation is not love. What you're getting is attachment, all right? And you're now setting yourself up for bigger problems later because in that attachment, in that investment of time, you are now going to have a harder time walking away. You're going to have a harder time accepting that you never belonged here. You may know it, but again, you will distract yourself from it. So it's extremely important that you heal and that you understand that you cannot overlook or make excuses for the red flags. It is important to address them, not just in them, but in you as well. So again, this is just another huge reason why rebound relationships will not work. And then the last reason why a rebound relationship won't work is because you're probably not truly over your ex. Now listen, you may not like that reality and you're trying so hard to forget your ex and not deal with that anymore. And sometimes it's not even that your ex was the right person for you. They could have been toxic, they could have been wrong for you, but because of all the time and energy you invested, you're still not over that situation. So when I say not over your ex, for a lot of you, it's really not over the relationship. It's not over the time you gave. You're not over the fact that you feel like you made a bad decision. So you haven't forgiven yourself for that relationship. But yes, in some situations, you may not be over the person you lost. They may have been a good person. It may have been the potentially right relationship, but you have been in a bad place. Hell, you may have gotten into that last relationship.
This dude's funny.
And then here you are again, entertaining someone else, haven't healed. And so, as I mentioned earlier, this new person could be an innocent bystander. So you not only damage yourself more, you damage them. And now this is how the cycle of hurt people continue.
That's a good word right there. The cycle of hurt people. It's real. It's
because
fact.
we don't take time to stop and address the deeper issues within us first before we go spreading our hurt to other individuals. And we convince ourselves that we're not doing anything wrong, that we're not hurting people, but you are.
Yes.
You are. You're hurting them. You're hurting you. Hell, if you got kids, you may be hurting the kids. There's so much that goes wrong from this. So again, to get back to the original third point, you may not be completely over your ex. You need to make sure you've resolved that within yourself. The last thing you need is to get with this new individual, all right? And your ex comes crawling back, running back, whatever. And now because you haven't really addressed that within you, address whatever you feel for them, or the fact that you even want to still be with them, you now find yourself in a situation where you're conflicted. You now find yourself in a situation where you may hurt the new person even more because you drop them and go back to their ex. I cannot tell you how many times that has happened. And I have to say this. It happens on both sides, men and women, but I'm gonna tell y'all straight up, I've seen or heard this story a bunch of times when it comes to women doing it. Women jumping to that new guy, ex comes back, and you go back to the raggedy old ex. And again, I'm not saying every ex is raggedy and every ex is wrong, but in a lot of cases, that is what's going on.
Raggedy.
So now, that new man is damaged. But again, it can happen on both sides. I'm not saying men have never done it to women. Either way, it's dysfunctional, it's unfortunate, it is wrong.
And I'm gonna end the video clip there, but Barman, he hit on some heavy hitter points today, and I find no lie in what he's sharing here. And so as we wrap up the show and wrap up the month of January, I just want to reiterate what we've talked about and what we've discussed as we move into the month of February. Can't believe it. We're already, into the month of February. 2024, y'all, is here. Welcome to it. But if any of you have not gotten anything out of these past 4 episodes, is we got to do the work on ourselves. We got to be mindful of who we are and not focusing on other people. We got to be mindful of the mishaps and the missteps that we did in the past to get into these toxic relationships, and we cannot repeat those processes. When we find new people that we want to get into a relationship with, we got to make sure we're asking the right questions at the right time. We're having the Socratic discussions. We're engaging. We are digging deep. We are really trying to draw out of people what it is that we really want to know, and we want to make sure that before we jump into another relationship that we have done the work on ourselves and not taking baggage into new relationships, which with that new relationship and the old baggage, it is a good possibility that we are going to tarnish that relationship and hurt the person that we are in a new relationship with. So please, ma'am, please, sir, make sure we're doing the work on ourselves. Acknowledge the signs of these new relationships that we're trying to move towards and run for the hills. If we know that it's going to be toxic, make sure that we're asking the right questions, seeking out the right responses for our betterment, for the other party's betterment, and that we make sure we're not bringing baggage into new relationships. So, with that being said, fam, continue to do the work on yourselves, continue to love on other people. And when we do that, we can better engage and show up in our various relationships in our lives on a daily basis to impact our families, our households, our communities, our society, our nation, the world. So until next time, continue to think differently about relationships. Peace.